This is something that I want to share real quick is like I have two things that I often do with clients at the very beginning of a session. And I don't know, I do think this helps and relates to trauma, but one of them is I'll have them just identify quickly a positive emotion they felt recently, why, and what they learned from it. And then a negative emotion they felt recently, why, like, well, what happened? And well, maybe boss cussed me out. What'd you learn from that? Well, I learned to be more assertive and not to put up with that, or so because you learn from your emotions, you learn things and gain insight. Another thing I often have clients do at the very beginning of a session too is just list some things that they're grateful for, like from the day before and what they're excited about, and it gets them in a better state. And I don't know exactly why I'm sharing that, except that self-awareness is an exercise with gratitude, and there's a lot of what we're talking about too is growing in your self-awareness, so you're not getting stuck. And how long does it take usually for someone to get, to the other side like that? Because
well, I mean, it depends on the trauma itself and like what they're working on. And there's layers to it, right? So I mean, I think if it's something more acute, I think people can make a lot of progress in like 6 months to a year, maybe even less if they are doing the work and they're really like, and when I say doing the work, I also mean just like where they're at in time and space and their ability to do the work.
okay,
But when we're talking about like healing childhood trauma and rewriting the stories that we wrote in childhood, it takes time. I mean, I
Right.
wish I could say it's like, it's a 4-step process of 4 weeks, but for a lot of people that does take time, but it's not forever. I see a lot of
Yeah.
change in my clients, usually like 6 months to a year, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that they don't ever have like layers to that, if that makes sense. Like they
Yeah.
get through one process. So I'll give the example I would give is, like more than 50% of my clients I see have eating disorders. And that's just because like there's such limited resources here that I get like, that's a ton of my caseload.
Yeah.
And I love working with that population. And so, the things that are keeping them stuck in those behaviors, usually they're able to heal that within like 6 months to a year when we're working together.
Okay.
Sometimes less, but I'd say that's rare. And that's if the family system's also working with them. So it's kind of interesting where there's that like family system dynamic too. Anyway, but
Like
I think if
supportive friends and supportive family.
Yes, that are also doing the work.
They're doing their own work.
Yes.
To help them in the process.
Yeah, the quickest turnaround I've ever seen has been with a client where amazing family system, everybody was in therapy.
That's crazy.
It was cool though.
It's so cool. And so what do you do then if
amazing.
you don't feel like your family is going to be supportive or they're going to get defensive or you don't want to hurt their feelings even because they were a part of that system in the past that basically exposed you to the trauma, not intentionally, but what do you tell them to do? Do they just leave it be or do they actually address it?
Yeah, I mean, I like leave it be as in
with their
inviting
family
the
or
family.
Friends. Yeah,
I think part of it is, so it's tough because sometimes there's actually like this grief process of I'm going to work on this stuff and my family isn't. And like, especially if they're younger. So say if it's like their parents aren't willing to work on their trauma and their stuff, they actually have to come to terms with the fact that they may, heal this stuff and their family may not ever.
Yeah.
Right? Like they actually have to come to
Yeah.
terms and accept that. And that's actually a big part of that process of being like, I have to grieve the fact that I'm having to heal trauma that my family system isn't willing to work on.
Yep.
And that's tough. And also saying like in that, I feel like as a therapist, I'm asking them to do a really hard thing. And it's cool though, that if they're able to accept it and like not in a way that they're angry or they're like, cause I think anger just keeps them on the hook for that too. Like if they're able to really lean into that and, focus on their own process and journey and lovingly understand that like for whatever reason, their family system is not in that space and they can't control that.
Yeah.
They're still able to do amazing work. And I've seen that. Like I've seen that where I've had
That's amazing.
Unfortunately, most of my clients, that is the case. They have to grieve the fact that they kind of emotionally outgrow their family.
Yeah. And they don't really need to even necessarily address it with their family.
No.
They just accept that that's where they're at and they can move on and heal themselves.
Yes.
And work. And so that's exciting.